Welcome to episode 2 of What's New in CX, a ZKast production. I'm here with my co-host, Juanita Coley, the fabulous Juanita Coley. Juanita, how you doing?
I am epic. I'm amazing. How you
Yeah,
doing?
self-proclaimed amazing. So this is an interesting month, the month of July. We were joking when we were prepping for this that we were actually struggling with stuff to talk about. But
Mhm.
boom, the end of the month came, and all of a sudden we had a big flurry of news. And so we had a lot of stuff to talk about, Juanita. I'm going to kick it over to you. What do you think the big news of the month was?
Listen, you are so right. We was like, what we gonna talk about this month? But then
Yeah,
the end of the month came and then boom, nice in the Cognigy buy.
yeah,
Then we started talking about 5.9, had a lot of moves that were going on from an executive team perspective. uh, Zoom came through talking about their products and different things like
yeah,
that. So it's just been like bam, bam, bam. It's like almost like they timed this across the different companies.
yeah. Give us a quiet first couple of weeks, and then boom, hit us with it all.
Right, all
Yeah,
of it, one at once. I would love to hear your thoughts though on. I would love to talk first about this nice and Cognigy buy. Well,
yeah,
what are your thoughts on that, and what do you think the impacts of that will be?
yeah. So I think we're proclaiming that the news of the month. And certainly it was, I think for NICE, they paid up almost $1 billion to buy Cognigy. I think
955, right?
Yeah, yeah. I think one of the things that NICE has been really good at is attaching other things to its core CCaaS offering. And so I remember at last year's analyst conference, Barack talked about this, where for every CCaaS deal they win, they sell 5 other products along with it. And
Mm.
so this gives them other products to sell along with it, which is the Cognigy um, the agentic agents. Now, Cognigy, by all accounts, was the market leader in the space, or is, I guess, Germany based, which I think is notable because NICE has been trying to expand more into Europe, so that gives them a footprint there. The Cognigy originally came to market trying to sell through partners. So Avaya is a partner, RingCentr's a partner, Genesis, 8x8. But the product was good enough that they were able to stand alone with it too. And I know a number of partners that sell it. So they got DHL, Lufthansa, Mercedes, big European customers. And I think it's really a great way for NICE to complement their offering. In fact, on the financial call, CEO Scott Russell talked about this, where now from a go-to-market perspective, they can offer all kinds of interactions, human agent hybrid interactions, self-service, and now agentic agents. But the key is it's all one platform. It can be managed from one interface. And from an AI perspective, all this becomes data which can be used to help them make smarter, better decisions. What did you think about it?
Yeah, one of the things that I think Nice does well, right, is they fundamentally were originally WFM, right? We know Nice as
Yes.
in the workforce world, we know them as IEX Total View, right? So then they go and expand into the CCaaS space so that they can start on this front end part of the conversation around like, hey, how do I get interactions to my business for customers, right? And so we do that, and then we start to around, like you said, they've started to build around this core CCAS of like, okay, conversational AI, agentic AI, and I think that's what's really important about this Cognigy buy is that one, it expands them, like you said, into this Germany space and now customer base that they have that they can expand into, but it also builds around the CCAS piece of what they've been building on for a couple of years now.
Yeah. So I think from a customer perspective, it creates one unified platform. I think agentic AI has been a kind of an emerging area that I think customers are ready for. I also think that, and Scott also talked about this, that don't underestimate the impact of being able to drop in all those engineers with AI skills.
Mm.
There is war on talent going on for AI skills, and I mean, let's face it, if you're coming out of college and you've got a degree in something AI, I'm not sure the CCaaS space is the one you want to work in. And so for them to be able to bring on that many people gives them a huge pool of talent. And he specifically called out the fact that they put in incentives in place to make sure that the people stay. And I think the the addition of the talent actually long term might be as notable as the products are getting now.
One thing that I think is interesting, I haven't seen anybody talk about this just yet, I don't think anyway, is people who are customers that are currently on Cognigy that have contract renewals or that are going to be, coming up that don't necessarily maybe want to go the nice way. What are the alternatives in the market and how will that be addressed? I'm interested to see how that shakes out. What are your thoughts on that?
Well, they talked about that both on the industry analyst and the financial analyst call, and they specifically said they're not going to disrupt the ecosystem, right? So if you're a Cognigy customer, we're using it through, say, Ring Central, that will stay in place. And I suspect most of the partners at Cognigy will remain partners. I think decoupling is hard. I don't expect, Genesis, Tony Bates really get a lot of thrills and writing nice checks, right? So I suspect that they might go a different way, but I think the other partners, 8x8 Ring will likely continue to stay that way. And I think from a nicest perspective, that's the right thing to do for the customer. Forcing them to take Cognigy out or to switch CCaaS vendors, I think is very disruptive business. And so I think making sure that that ecosystem stays in place is the right thing to do. And that's what I think they'll do. Yeah. Now, long term, right, you might build more features and tighter integrations with your own product, which gives them a nice kind of Trojan horse way to sell. But in the short term, I think the customers will be okay. But long term, I would, seriously expect NICE to create much tighter integration with their product and with others. But that's to be expected, right?
Yeah, I'm interested to see how that actually. I know on paper what it sounds like, but how it actually works in on the customer side.
Yeah. All right. So thumbs up for that. Also this week, we had some really interesting news out of Five9. They actually reported earnings this week, and they had very good earnings. They had a beat and raise, which was good to see. This is a company whose stock, I think, is down 40% year to date. And so a little bit of positive news on the financial side is great. But the bigger news is all the executive changes. At the beginning of the week, they announced that CMO Nikki Hall, EVP of Corporate Strategy Jim Doran, and Head of HR Trisha Yankovich were confirmed to be leaving. And then on the earnings call, Mike Burkland said he'll be retiring, and they're in hunt for a new CEO. Juanita, what do you make of all these executive changes?
I was just going to ask you the same thing, so when I first heard the news, I said, man, I wonder what that is. Not even the Mike Burkland news, but the first, news around the executive changes around, CMO Nikki, and then we had Trish, and then Jim. Those news, I was like, I wonder if something is happening from a switch in leadership or direction from what we're going to focus on perspective. But then just like days later, if it was a day later, then the Mike Burkland news dropped about retiring. And, I'm like, are we changing from I really honestly, when I think about it, I'm like, I don't know what to make of that news. I don't know if this is a buy, move, like a takeover type of thing. I don't know if this is just switching what we're focusing on. But then on top of that, we also begin to see some elevations, right? Like, so Matt Tuckness became CRO, right? So we saw some elevations. And so I'm like, promotions. So I'm really not sure what to make of the news.
Yeah, with private equity has been sniffing around Five9 for a while. And frankly, they're a great candidate for private equity. We're in a market that's in transition. They're a $1 billion company.
But they went down that path before, though, right? So back in a couple years ago, right? This was a conversation between Five9 and Zoom, rumored, right? That this was going to be a buy, but that
wasn't rumored. I mean, a bid was placed and they could never get it closed. And I believe if you do some back of the envelope math, even with the stock declines and stuff, that still would have been a good deal for Five9 shareholders. I think there's some kind of event coming, either PE takeover, acquisition by another company, or perhaps even they maybe acquire somebody and that leader takes over, something like that. It's just hard to see this many executive changes without something bigger being afoot. Otherwise, it'd be otherwise it's very disruptive, right? And so you're consolidating leadership, you're lightening salary. I think, Mike Burkland did a great job of getting the company to $1 billion, but growing it to 2 billion, 5 billion, right? Significantly harder. We're transitioning, from CCaaS to AI-led CCaaS. That's a different skill set that requires different talent, right? That's why nice about Cognigy. And the company is an interesting one in that it's not kind of it's not a big, like $1 billion isn't a big software company. It's not small either though, right? So
no, it's not.
yeah. But they're kind of stuck in the middle here, right? They're not Zoom big, but they're not, 8x8 small, so they can't be as nimble, but they also don't have the size and scale. And so I do think they are a likely takeover for private equity. And I think all these executive changes point to that. So I guess we'll find out in the next couple of weeks or, a couple of months, but sure seems that way.
I think one thing for sure, though, that probably everybody can agree on is what got them to where they are. It's been great, but it won't probably take them to the next place of where they're trying to go. And so I think that's ultimately the bottom line of what we're seeing manifest as these different changes. Is probably like, hey, we're trying to go to this next level, whatever that actually is going to be, and we need to kind of make some changes. So I think ultimately that's the problem.
They do have a good product and they've got a very good customer base, right? So if it does get swallowed up by a bigger company, I mean, there's a lot of appeal there. They got a good engineering team, and a decent go-to-market, a good brand, and so there's a lot of value there. It's just realizing it from a shareholder perspective is getting more and more difficult, especially in a world where, Juanita, I think part of the challenge with the stock isn't unique to Five9. Investors right now really don't like the CCaaS space. They think that with all the agents coming, it's going to kill the businesses. I think they're very complementary. I actually think there's a lot of upside. I think Mike Burkland's actually done a great job on some of the earnings calls trying to explain, as we add agentic agents and AI into our mix, our revenue changes and it'll look like this down the road. But investors haven't really bought it yet, and so it's not, like I said, it's not unique to Five9. You see, Zoom stock, where it was pre-pandemic, RingCentral struggles. It's the whole sector right now, and I think that's why again, I think a private equity takeover makes some sense. So.
Yeah. What are you thinking about in other news, right? Yeah. What are you thinking about Zoom's product drops around like the dialer and agentic AI? What are you thinking about that?
Yeah. So we had a lot of corporate news and we did have some product news. And so Zoom had their Perspective event, which was their industry analyst conference. They talked a lot about CCaaS there, and they announced some new offerings. So their agentic AI offering, and then also their auto dialer. And I think these are both really good core features to help bolster the CCaaS offering. Zoom has surprised me. I thought when the Five9 deal fell apart and they decided to go build their own, they were too late a company to be able to jump into CCaaS and catch up. But all the customer and partner feedback has been more than positive. They have, to say they've thrown most of their eggs in this basket is an understatement. Eric Yuan, their CEO, made himself GM of the contact center business, right? And so these are just a couple of features that I think are. I mean, you're an agent, but how valuable would these features be to you?
I think, like you said, Eric is all in on contact center, and with their theme, move at the speed of Zoom, they are rapidly contact center, and adding these, agentic AI, auto dialer. These are all things that in a contact center space you're going to need, and from an end user perspective, we need in order to make the space that much more nimble from a contact center perspective. So with Zoom leaning in on that, I think from a product or a platform perspective, is fundamentally or traditionally been known as, Zoom, that's meeting platform, but they've expanded their ecosystem, if you will, or their platform, if you will, and moved into this contact center space, almost like what NICE did from WFM to CCaaS. Zoom is done with meetings and virtual meeting space to CCaaS, and I think that has been notable.
Yeah, I think they're a notable challenger to the incumbents. I think the one thing that's interesting about Zoom is I don't remember any other company in recent history where the users liked the product as much as they do, right? Zoom is very easy to use. And so, people like using Zoom even in their personal lives. And so extending that to the contact center isn't a huge reach, right? People like the interface, people like the company. And so it gets a lot of pull from users. And usually when you talk about corporate vendors, you think, how many people like Salesforce or Microsoft? Like you can't stand those tools in your personal life, but Zoom's different.
I think that has been a thing because of when Zoom was kind of not introduced to the market, but kind of what was happening in the market at the time, right? This was happening during the pandemic where families were connecting via Zoom. So it became very much so a consumer conversation. Right. And so because Zoom was a consumer conversation, almost like Kleenex is a consumer conversation, we know it in our personal lives. Whereas other CCaaS companies, like you have to be in corporate or you have to be in the contact center to experience it. Zoom was in your home, right? Because you connected with your family on it during the pandemic. And now people who were connecting with their families on it also happen to be in the contact center space. So it's kind of a little easier conversation to have with the CX leader, at least from my perspective. And what I've been talking to is like, oh yeah, do you know Zoom has contact center? They're like, meeting platform? Yeah.
Well, that's their biggest challenge, is shedding the image that they're a meeting platform, right? So they did that. I think from a go-to-market perspective, that is the biggest thing they need to do, is get people to think about Zoom differently. And at the analyst event, Eric talked a lot about that. They're really trying to disrupt work and workflows, be it in the contact center with employees, more so than just being known as a meeting company. And frankly, I think that's good. The core video product is really becoming almost a commodity, right? Like video is a feature of almost everything today. It's not really a product. Meetings and contact centers, the product, and then video is a means to it. So, but I thought they were good features, and I think it's just a logical extension of what they're doing. I want to go back to WEM. We had one other piece of news this month, and that was a rumored takeover by Thoma of Verint, right? They're really the WEM leader. And Verint's an interesting company. I think by all accounts, people would look at them as the market leader in that space, but they've really struggled to grow the business. I was looking at some stats this morning. The stock was $18 more than 20 years ago. It's about $20 today. It hasn't really moved a lot. From a shareholder value perspective, it's been like, it's been a dog. When you look at the route other vendors are going down, NICE obviously has their own, but Zoom's building their own, Amazon's building their own for Connect. The barrier to entry into what Verint does isn't all that high anymore. Even on the bot side of their business, that's all moving to Agentic. And to me, again, a private equity takeover would make some sense, because this company really needs to reinvent itself before it's too late. And you can't really do that as a publicly traded company. I know you've worked with Verint for a long time. Your thoughts on them?
Yeah, I think you hit the nail on the head, right? The struggle is that Verint has traditionally been known as a WFM or W workforce engagement platform, right? And
really the best there is, right? I mean, they're really good platform. Yeah.
Chef's kiss, right? But however, when we think about go to market and how the market buys, right? When we think about how the market buys, usually they're making their CCaaS, how do customers reach me? They're making that decision. And then as a result of my customer reaching me, how do I serve that customer, whether that's with AI or with humans, right? That's a workforce type of decision. And so typically on the front end of that equation, the buyer is making the CCaaS. I got to connect to customer before I serve the customer.
I think you're talking about their open CCaaS offering, right?
Right. And so
Yeah.
traditionally, they've been on that latter half of the conversation. Recently, they've said, hey, we have this open CCaaS. But I think, and so that conversation has been having. So we have this open CCaaS conversation. We have this WFM conversation that's, what they've originally been always known for. Dan has really been very clear in his focus on wanting to be a CX automation company. Like, I think that's their focus. I think the struggle is on this open CCaaS and how we get there. How do we become known as CX automation, and tying that to open CCaaS and what that means to the market and the buyer. I think that's the big struggle for Verint. And so from a takeover perspective, if this were to happen, I think that is where the focus is going to be.
Yeah. In fact, I'd like to see a PE firm buy Verint, buy a CCaaS, maybe 5.9, and put them together, right? And right, and have a much stronger company that way. I think the challenge Verint's had with their open CCaaS is that I think of Verint as a company that participates in other companies' ecosystems, right? They're used by Avaya. They've been used by a lot of other companies. But with open CCaaS, they wanted to make themselves the center of the ecosystem and build one around them. But I don't think their core product is ever the decision-making point, right? So they're better off being part of somebody else's ecosystem, unless they go down the path like Nice did, where they go and build their own, right? Or go acquire their own. And so to me, this has all the hallmarks of a private equity takeover. Private equity hasn't had a ton of success in communications, though. So let's, it struggled with Avaya, things like that. Mitel's in private equity, right? So, we'll see, what that lends itself to. But clearly, what they're doing today, at least from a shareholder perspective, isn't working, and is likely to get more challenging as more and more companies build out their own WEM and we shift to agentic AI.
Agentic AI, yeah.
Yeah. So, all right, Juanita. Well, that was a lot of stuff for what's new in CX. I guess we got some September's or August is coming up, and so we'll see what that brings. But if August is anything like July, I mean, it's going to be a busy month. So
yeah, it's my birthday month, so that's the real news.
Well, happy birthday to you. When's your birthday?
It's on the 28th. It's at the end of the month, but that's the news. That's the news. I'm excited.
Everybody watching, make sure you drop her a LinkedIn message or something, say happy birthday to her. So
absolutely.
All right. So on behalf of co-host Juanita Coley, I'm ZS Caravallo from ZK Research, saying thanks for watching. Give us a like and also hit that subscribe button. We'll see you next time on episode 3 of What's New in CX.